So did Joe Rogan just become a Christian without anybody else noticing? I was watching the podcast that he had the other week with Cody Tucker. He sat down with him and had their whole, 3-hour to 4-hour conversation. And I watched most of it, but this one, I did not get to this point, and I'm just seeing clips of things that Joe said about Jesus that just caught me off guard. Did he just become a Christian and I didn't notice it? Did you notice it? My name is Brandon Fogel. This is Evolution. Let's dive into this. This completely caught me off guard. Like I said, I watch most of his podcasts. I listen to him, depending on a lot of time who the guest is. And this one was really good. Cody Tucker sat down, went on the show, and they talked about a lot of different things. I made it about halfway through, and then went on to another one of his podcasts or another something else, But I'm going to show you a clip of something he said in their discussion and talking about this universe that we find ourselves in. Even if you are a naturalist, a pure naturalist, and you think that everything has a reasonable, rational explanation for it, and there's just laws that just govern this universe that we're in, they threw out the whole this eternally existed. I don't even think that's on the table anymore. This universe did not eternally exist. But now anyone that is even a scientist worth their salt understands that there was a beginning, and we have the Big Bang Theory. Joe and Cody, they're talking about this, and they're saying, even you got to accept some miracle that we all came from nothing, and this all just exploded into a universe that just is working perfectly together and is in tune, and everybody just develops consciousness and all that. There had to have been some miracle, and Joe lands on, I think it's more reasonable and more rational to put your faith in Jesus. At least he says, I'm sticking with Jesus. Let's take a look at this clip. It is wild.
Because if it's just something, if it's just the nature of everything, there is always something, right?
Right.
It couldn't be nothing and then all of a sudden everything. That
Right.
seems...
Because what started that? What kicked that off?
Exactly.
What snapped its fingers?
That's McKenna's great line. Terrence McKenna had a great line about the difference between science and religion is that science only asks you for one miracle. I want you to believe in one miracle, the Big Bang.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's a great line.
Yeah.
It's because it really is true.
Yes.
And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason than anybody's adequately explained to me. That makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't buy that.
I'm sticking with Jesus on that one.
Yeah.
Jesus makes more sense.
It makes a hell of a lot more sense.
People have...
There you have it. I'm sticking with Jesus. Jesus makes more sense. That is, at least from where Joe has come to now, he is constantly talking about Jesus. Pretty much every podcast he has, the topic gets brought up, and Joe used to be hostile to Christianity. He made fun of it. He thought it was stupid, and I think that is reasonable. That is reasonable to be hostile to Christianity, to think it is stupid. And if you're not, then you're really not being honest with yourself. Because the Bible makes it clear, it says, to the foolish, or to the natural person, this whole thing about the cross and Jesus being crucified and him dying for our sins, that's foolishness. It's stupidity. So I think Joe was just being honest, as any person is. You got to come to at least put that wall down and say, is it reasonable or not? And Joe made it clear. He said it was stupid, and I could not get on board with Jesus and all this. It's all myth and all made up fantasy and all that. But now he's like, if we come to the point, I think it's a lot of him having Jordan Peterson on and a lot of different people, Wes Huff coming on and talking about Christ and just the logical nature of everything in the Bible, and archaeology just supports it. It seems like every turn of the spade, it supports what the Bible has put down for thousands of years for us. It just upholds it. Everything that we find in history eventually comes out that the Bible was correct. We can't say everything right now. There's an answer for everything, because there is seemingly contradictions at points in the Bible, and I get that. But just probabilistically, it seems like every century something more comes out that it becomes more rational to believe. And I think just Joe being willing to listen and sit and hear about all this, you got to come from it even if you don't believe in Christ or the Bible, that we're all even here is a miracle. It's all a miracle one way or the other. We can't explain it. And I listened to Joe Tucker Carlson, who he had a well-known scientist or last week on there. Who was that? I cannot think of it immediately. Let me actually look it up, because I actually did a video last week about it, and I can't think of who it was. Tucker Carlson. I'll look at it and I'll find it next time. Maybe I just look it up. Let me just look it up. I'm gonna take a second. But everything they talked about, I'm having a moment. That's who it was. Brett Weinstein. I did a video about it last week, and I couldn't remember the name of who it was. But Brett Weinstein is a very well-respected scientist, biologist, in all accounts, and just knows this stuff in and out. And Tucker kept pressing him over and over about belief in all this, and where'd we all come from? And because Brett doesn't believe in God, and Tucker's like, well, can you explain it? And it comes down to, no, I can't. And nobody can know. And every time that Brett, he gives a very good, smart, articulate descriptions of how everything happens in the evolutionary process and how this world functions together. But he can't explain, how did this all spring into existence? How did it all happen? And I think that is the struggle that Joe has, and he's having, because he says no one's been able to rationally be able to explain it to me so that it makes sense. We cannot know. Nobody can know how this all came into existence. So by default, it seems like the best explanation in the most rational place to put one's faith is Christ, because they're asking in naturalistic understanding, it's all about, you have to believe in something put all this into motion. So that in itself is a miracle. So you still have to accept a miracle. And if one miracle can happen, why couldn't all these other miracles happen? If God is over nature and he's the one who's put in the laws of nature, why cannot he suspend his laws at time? And I think that is where Joe is at. And to me, it's just, I'm always very interested in the journey of Joe, because, and even listen to him and Jordan Peterson as they talk about Christ and talk about all this stuff, and Tucker. At the end of the day, it's not a matter of assent. I intellectually believe that Jesus is the most rational explanation for everything, and it is the safest place to put my faith, because at the end of the day, everybody is putting their faith in something. You're putting your faith in something. But it is not enough to just assent and intellectually agree that Jesus is true, the resurrection happened, the Bible is correct, all that, But But I think that is a hurdle that you have to get past before you can actually surrender to Christ. Because you have to be fully in and bought into who Jesus is. You have to sell all and give yourself to Christ to be his. But where Joe is at, in him intellectually assenting and saying, yeah, Jesus is the most reliable place to put one's faith, because the other way, you still have to accept miracles. And all that I'm hearing about Jesus, I'm siding with Jesus. I'm siding with Jesus. So it's like, I had to get past the intellectual things in myself. I could not get on board with who Christ was and all that. I had to get past that. I could not check my brain at the door and give my life to Jesus without understanding that he actually really existed, and there was reliable evidence for his resurrection. And if his resurrection happened, that changes everything. And I think Joe is there. I think he's there, but it's still a hard issue, and it's still a supernatural issue. I cannot stress this enough. It's not that people out there, oh, I'm going to believe in Jesus today. I'm going to believe in him. I'm just going to change my whole mindset and believe in him. And just believing and thinking something is true is not enough. You have to give yourself fully to him. And I think Joe is getting closer and closer to that. I think God is the only one that knows. God's the only one that can really open his heart to receive Christ. But man, it's like, if it's this powerful and he is saying this, there's been so many atheists and people that are against the Bible and against Christ throughout history. People that try to destroy and deny Jesus and the resurrection. C.S. Lewis was one. He was an atheist. He did not want Christianity to let's see if I can say this. He did not want Christianity to be true. He did not want it. Because in his viewpoint, if Jesus is true, if there is a God, then there is no door marked exit. I can't get out. I can't punch out and somehow escape. He's there. He's what we got to deal with, whether we want to end ourselves or we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If we did end ourselves, we would just be standing in his presence. We would just be before him. This whole curtain that is up, that is our life, and this world that we see would just be pulled down, and we would see him face to face, even though he is face to face right now with us. There's just a veil over all our eyes. We just don't see him. And that was what terrified C.S. Lewis. And it is terrifying. But until you understand that this consuming fire that is God is also pure love. He loves more than you could ever imagine loving someone. You know what I mean? So he is a safe place to put your faith. And I think Joe is getting there, and I hope he gets there fully. All right. Well, if you like this video, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share it with anyone. My name is Brandon Fogel, and I do this every day at 7 a.m. Central Time. We'll leave it at that. Have a great day, everyone. I could see the cracks falling in the paint, growing like a fire. What do I say?